You're watching CNET, Center County's Government and Educational Access Network.
Welcome to CNET Around the County. I'm Ann Danahy, and today we're talking with James Byrnes, a local glassblower who has a special ornament on sale to benefit the Center County Historical Library and Museum. Hi Jim, thanks for coming in to talk with us.
Thanks for having me.
So just tell us a little bit about what it means to be a glassblower. What goes into that? I think people have different ideas, and you can picture someone that seems kind of mysterious.
Yeah, and in days gone by, I guess it was more industrial, as glass vessels were a practical need. That side of it's long since automated, so it's kind of the realm of the artist and the craftsman now, I think, more so. There's kind of two different types of glass blowing too. I think a lot of people picture one with a metal pipe dipping into a furnace full of molten glass and kind of blowing like this. I do that too. That, for me, that's kind of recreational. It's not my expertise. What I do professionally is called flame working, which is a kind of a subset of glass blowing. I refer to myself as a glass blower because my work is all blown by mouth. But I'm seated at as I think a video might show, I'm seated at a bench with a stationary torch in front of me, and I'm remelting tubing and layering on rods of color and so forth, and blowing and shaping and stretching and twisting and just having fun with it.
And how did you end up doing that? How did you learn how to do it?
Well, I was trained originally as a scientific glassblowing apprentice. I hesitate to say apprentice. That creates a picture that's probably a little more formal. It was just sort of on-the-job training. But yeah, I was fortunate to get into such a situation. I learned the skills, and from the time I had the skill set, I've been doing decorative work sort of on the side. You know, I was always fortunate enough to work at companies that allowed for that. So.
And so it was a business, it was a job. What type of glass blowing was that?
Well, scientific glass blowing, and an easy description is if you picture the old Frankenstein movie in the lab, the background, that's a vacuum system. That's an example of laboratory glass. I made most of my 30 years as a scientific glass blower were spent making instruments to measure fluid viscosity. And then about 5 years of it was in chromatography, which is a business of separations.
And now do you work on more the artistic side of it full time?
Yes.
And tell us a little bit about, you have a special ornament this year to support the Center County Library and Historical Museum.
Yes, my wife used to work for the Center County Library, and she doesn't anymore, but ever since then that's kind of created a tie with us in the library. I make Christmas ornaments, so at Bellefonte's Victorian Christmas, we have, for the past several years, I've not participated as a vendor, but my ornaments have been for sale as a fundraiser for the library in the historic library. So.
And so why did you decide to do it? What do you like about the library in particular?
Oh, well, you know, frankly, my wife is a big book person, so my wife and kids are big on books. I'm probably less so of the family, but that's sort of the tie.
Okay. And how did you go about designing the ornament for the occasion? When you're coming up with a new ornament plan, what goes into it?
The design that we did for the library is one of my standards design-wise. Now, it was special colors. I've never done that design in that color pattern. We tried to match the colors for their logo a little bit. And I really like how it came out. They look good. But in terms of my designs overall for my ornaments, when I started making ornaments, my intention at the time was to never make the same design twice. So that only goes so far. But it was very seat of the pants. I didn't design in advance. I just sat and started messing around with glass, having fun, doodling, if you will. And kind of a family of designs sort of floated to the top.
And is that how you typically work?
It is how I originally did. Now, at this point, we're trying to keep it fresh and add new designs each year and stuff. So it's getting to be a little bit, now we're finding ourselves sitting, my wife and I, with paper and pencil at the kitchen table, thinking and sketching, and but it didn't start out that way.
And glass blowing is not something you typically think about people learning how to do anymore. Is there still an industry for people to learn how to do it, or is it something that just kind of by happenstance?
Well, in the broad scheme of glass blowing, furnace glass blowing technology has allowed it to be done on a smaller scale, so that's brought a lot of studio artist type people into it. Flame working has always been doable on a small scale. Traditionally, it was just laboratory wear and so forth. One of the limitations that had been is that 30 years ago we had a very, very limited color palette in the type of glass I work with, which is a borosilicate high melting glass known commonly by the brand name of Pyrex. So it's the type of glass, same type as cookware. And while color glass isn't new, a color palette in that type of glass is relatively new. And so over the past 30 years, as they've developed colors, that has been the dangling carrot that have brought a lot more artists into flame working glass.
Oh, interesting. And did you envision when you first were learning how to do it and it was your job, it was your profession, that you would still be involved in this way?
I think so, yeah. I think part of me always hoped that I'd be able to early retire or otherwise transcend my position in industry and be just doing the decorative side. That's more my nature.
Right. And how do you see that changing? So now you can have the color palette is involved. Do you see it continuing to evolve?
Oh, well, I hope so. Frankly, for my purposes, it's probably evolved enough. Yeah. That probably makes me sound kind of limited, doesn't it? But if they keep coming out with new stuff, I'll keep dabbling and see where it goes.
Yeah. Is it still difficult? I mean, just from like an outsider perspective, it appears, if you see somebody doing it, it appears to be.
I think it can be compared loosely to other muscle memory kind of things, whether it's martial arts or musical instruments or whatever. Your body kind of learns how to do this through repetition. And so once you've been through enough repetition, it becomes second nature to you. For me, a lot of my designs are kind of symmetric from top to bottom. Maintaining that symmetry is the ongoing challenge. The glass blowing techniques are kind of ingrained now. So.
Do you have some you have to kind of toss away?
Actually very, very few. There are things that stray and they aren't quite what I planned on, but they're still, it's still a good ornament. So I separate, I have an online presence so people can buy from my website. I have another online gallery I sell through. And in circumstances like that, I have to match it responsibly to the picture people are seeing online. So when I make ornaments that are fine, there's nothing wrong, but they don't really match that picture enough, well, I separate those, and those are some of the ones I use for direct retail shows that I do in state and so forth.
And how can people who want to support the library and buy that ornament in particular, how can they do that?
Center County Library, I'm sure, I think they've begun some advanced sales of the commissioned ornament we're discussing, and I'm sure they plan to have it available at the library as well.
And this is probably a great idea. It seems like a fun idea for you to get involved. You said your wife was originally kind of the tie-in to doing this. Is it kind of fun to see that your work is benefiting the library?
Yeah, and we do have the tie to the library. It's funny, since my wife had worked there, now the people at the library recognize me as my wife's husband. Years before that, they knew me as my daughter's father.
So, she was in the library all the time?
She was always there, yeah.
And the book lovers in the family. And so now you're the resident artist of the library?
Okay. For the moment, I suppose.
So the ornament for sale at the Historical Museum and Library, I mean, that's one project, but it seems like there's a lot of support for artists in the Bellefonte community in Center County. Is that what you've found over the years?
I think so, yeah. I participated some years ago, actually I think it was 2005, that time does fly, in an ornament show they do at the Palmer Museum of Art here on campus. This past summer, since I sell Christmas ornaments, I haven't done too much out of Christmas season type things. I've started to experiment with that. This past summer, I shared a booth with another artist at the Bellefonte Arts Fest. She does fused glass pieces, and I brought my flame worked pieces, and together we were good enough to win the Best in Show for that. So that was nice, and they were good to us there, so we're looking forward to coming back to that.
Oh, that's great. And so you do both types of, you do the glass blowing and the flame work.
Right, yeah.
And just tell us a little bit about that. Do you enjoy them both?
Oh, I do. Furnace glass, I think what I like about that is you're beginning more with a true raw material. You have this molten glass that's got a life of its own. Where flame working is a little more static. You're starting with pre-manufactured glass components, you might say, in the form of tubing and rods.
And have you always done both of them when you first got started?
Yeah, prior to my flame working, I had a little bit of experience in furnace glass blowing. That actually came first. The very first time I worked with molten glass I was working at a living museum, they called it. It was kind of a village. A central Pennsylvania reference would be like Old Bedford's Village, if anyone's familiar with that. They had a blacksmith shop and a pottery and a village tavern, and they had a glass house where glass blowing was done. I wasn't a glassblower then. My job was to wear an 18th century costume and explain to school children and stuff what was going on in the room. And at one point, a group of seniors came by, and they were disappointed because they wanted to see glass blowing, and the shop was making solid paperweights that day. They were beautiful, but they weren't blown. So I could understand their disappointment. So I said, if you can come back lunchtime, I'll show you glass blowing. Mind you, I had never blown glass. So they came back lunchtime, and I stuck a cold iron in the furnace and pulled it out and blew. And made a terrible mess, but they went away entertained, and I got in a certain amount of trouble. But after that, I was trained to do some basic things to help. So.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to tell people about the ornament and how they can get it to support the library?
Well, like I say, locally, I think a call or a visit would probably suffice. Someone more remote this day and age, I'm sure that's all Googleable.
Well, great, Jim. Thank you so much for coming in and talking with us.
You're welcome. It's been fun. Thank you, Ann.
We've been talking with Jim Byrnes, a local glass blower who's designed an ornament specially to benefit the Center County Library and Historical Museum. I'm Ann Danahy. Thank you for watching, and happy holidays from all of us at Around the County.